I think we just kind of introducing everybody, just the peers, supervising peers, and I talked about Rhoda, Gloria, and myself kind of will be leading it. So this is just a little title page. So just an overview of things that we'll be talking about. Trying to bridge that clinical voice and the peer perspective. So seeing what, how we're able to kind of bridge that gap between the youth and the family, and then that clinical aspect, and just that both of those voices and how we can work together to kind of so we can all be on the same page. A clinical standpoint, so clarifying the clinician's lead in the intervention. Rhoda's going to be talking about how although all of our positions are important, there's the clinician being that person that's kind of driving the intervention and setting forth those treatment plan goals and how we're able to support that in that. And then also just kind of supporting information for clinicians and supervisors regarding the role. We understand that not everybody has the opportunity to have a peer supervisor, and at times that we have the opportunities to support peers in a supervisor position while not being a peer ourselves. And so just we're going a little bit of useful information for people who could be in those positions. And then navigating supporting families through teamwork. A lot of times as peers, we kind of get a chance to really build that rapport, and we're going to be exploring how we can use those rapport to be able to support like our team members with the family and support the family with the team members. And then a familiar voice. Me and Gloria will be covering how us as peers are able to supervise other peers and what we can bring to the table being peers ourselves. So bridging the clinical voice and the parent youth peer perspective. I added that little GIF on there because that's sometimes how I feel, man. I'm like, I'm still able to relate to this youth, man, but I'd be feeling like really old. So I just threw that in there. But youth voice and choice. I think this is something that it's really important, right? Like us, while we're peers and we're not trying to be an advocate, right? We try to stay away from titles like an advocate, coaching, mentoring, those types of titles that really give you that sense of hierarchy. Youth voice and choice can sometimes be tricky because we want to make sure that the youth voice and choice is heard in our interventions while still trying to identify how we can be helpful to them. So if I'm supporting a youth and he doesn't want to clean up his room, I'm probably not going to be someone to come and well, it's his voice and his choice. He doesn't want to clean up his room. However, if there is something that's really important to the youth that people might not really see as a need, but it might be a need for the youth, that's something that us as peers that we can step up and really make sure that youth voice and choice is being heard. So really making sure that their voice is heard throughout the intervention, because the intervention is about that family, and we want to make sure that they feel invested in going through that intervention with us. Using family-friendly language. A lot of times, some of our families that we have supported have been through a lot of different systems already, or they're unsure of the systems that they come in contact with, right? So using family-friendly language is really us kind of just bridging that gap, again, using our peer perspective, just making it really simplified to that family, what kind of services we're going to be providing. So as a youth might be intimidated by words like coping strategies and DBT skills and stuff like that, but that could really just be some things that we just work on, and they might not even realize that we're working on them. And it's as simple as hey, let's try some breathing techniques and remember how we tried that. And, so they're really gaining these skills in a family-friendly language and in ways that it's not so intimidating I've heard you let me know that stuff is, I don't know what that means, and so us as peers kind of really working in collaboration with the clinician, we're able to kind of bridge that gap and help them understand that family-friendly language. So supporting the team in this one, a lot of times since we do have a really good, we build a really good relationship with these youth because we are able to share so much of our own personal journey, and we start to build this rapport and this trust. A lot of times families and youth can really have a lot of trust in their peers, so much that they only want to see their peers, right? They only see the benefit of having their peers. And in these positions, there could be times where they voice like, this clinician's not working for me. This clinician's not, they're not listening to me. And these are opportunities that us as peers can use our position to help encourage our families to engage with some of the other members on their team and really see the benefit of them like being on the team, right? So a lot of times, like, I hear from youth, like, I'm not trying to work with this person. They don't listen to me. They don't get me, they're always talking, like, they're always being a square and stuff like that, right? And that's their words on mine. And so, like, I just really, I'm able to use that position in supporting these youth to talk up those positions. Like, hey, well, JJ is going to be working on, she's an FSS and a family support specialist, and she works specifically for these things, and she has a lot of skills. So it's like really an opportunity to kind of build those team members up. And sometimes I tell them, like, man, I've worked with Gloria for a long time. Like, I really trust her, man. We work really well, and I know she does really good work. Why don't she tag along with me next time we get to see each other, and we can start working all together. So it could be an opportunity to really start building that rapport with the clinician as well, especially if at times, the clinician can join you on the sessions and kind of see like that peer perspective and how you guys are able to, or how we're able to approach the family with different strategies on how to reach their treatment plan goals. I should have noted earlier that while me, Gloria, and Rhoda will be talking about supervising peers, a lot of the things we'll talk about are things that are ways and kind of protocols that we go through at Catholic Community Services at the North End. But I do want to like reflect that, like, if you do have questions or any clarifications, you should always like go to your direct supervisor as far as how things should move along or any type of supervision. You just want to make sure that that you guys are going to your supervisor, and Oscar told me I got to do this, or Oscar told me that. But just always, referring back, it's just always a good golden rule, man. Like, refer back to your supervisor and make sure that's the way that, you guys might want to be like moving and stuff, right? If you guys have any questions, like, will they do it over there like this? How would that fit in our setting? Or is that something that we could work on our setting? So just really always refer back to your supervisor for sure.
Right, and then so I'll kind of talk a little bit from the parent perspective of when parent peers are supporting parents. A lot of times, like when it talks about explaining services in real language that parents can understand, sometimes I think when services first start, there's a lot of terminology, there's a lot of processes, there's just a lot, and parents sometimes are a little overwhelmed. And so a lot of times when the parent peer is meeting with them, they can sit and kind of have that conversation about, what is this? Or like sometimes I hear parents will say, I don't understand, they're taking my child out to go skate at the skate park. What does that have to do with therapy? And so it's being able to have that parent peer kind of sit down and have a conversation with the parent, kind of explaining services so that they're understanding it in, I guess, parent terminology, pulling from your own lived experience to be able to expand on that information to the parent. And then it also kind of goes into helping to develop and incorporate, I can't see the edge there, into the plan of whatever the service plan is for that youth that's in services. And so it's, making sure you're talking with that parent, getting their input on what they would kind of like to see for services, what their plans are and goals are for their child, and then just kind of making sure that their voice is always heard and brought forth. A lot of times meeting families where they're at, sometimes families may not be ready to start services, or they need a little bit of a, as I would call a breather. So it's not like trying to rush them to do something that they're not quite ready to do. And I mean, for some families, I've known of an instance where there was a mom, took me about a good month or so to kind of connect with her, but every week I would kind of reach out to her, leave her a message. And when she finally did schedule with me, that was one of the first things that she mentioned is, wow, even though I didn't call you back and even though I didn't talk to you, you were still reaching out to me, you know, and I appreciate that you didn't give up on that. And I think, let's see, the last one, kind of empowering parents to speak up. I always think that that's so important because a lot of times when families are coming into services, parents are just kind of, they're at the end. They're at that point where they just want to give up. Their hope is kind of fading and they just don't see that there's going to be any good to come of anything. And as they're in services, working with our teams, a lot of times there might be things that parents want to voice, but they're hesitant because of interactions they've had with other systems previously. And so that's where that parent support can really empower that parent, you know, hey, I can go to the meeting with you. You know, if there's a call you need to make on the phone, I can be there to make that call with you. But knowing that if a parent is empowered to speak up, that's a skill that, of course, having children, you're going to use that the entire time that you're raising your children. And so those are just some of the things in conjunction to what Oscar shared, of bringing, you know, that clinical voice and the parent youth peer perspective in place.
I thought it was funny because like I had like we were talking about using family-friendly language, and earlier we mentioned this. I mentioned this with Gloria, and she had explaining services in real language that parents can understand. It's like we're saying the same thing, but like in the way that we are putting it forward. Like I'm used to coming in contact with youth, and it just felt like a more grown-up way of saying explaining services in a real language parents can understand, as opposed to using family-friendly language, right? Because we're saying the same thing, but at the same time, we're not projecting the same manner, you know what I mean, to like the same like age, like demographic, I guess you would say. Like she's working with parents, I'm working with youth, but yeah. So we'll hear from Rhoda in the clinical standpoint and clarifying the clinician leading the intervention.
Sure, and Oscar and Gloria, if you don't mind, do you guys have any? You can always wait till the end as well, but do you have any questions regarding anything that Gloria and Oscar just related, or any comments or anything before I go to the next one? I think we have a question. Should the whole team initiate first contact with a family? Do you guys want to answer that, or do you want me to answer that?
I can give like my thoughts, and then I mean I think that it always depends on the family.
Yeah.
It's always going to be individual, so it really depends. It might be okay, but I think at the very least, the clinician and the peer, right? Because there's been times where we've gone out to meet families who aren't always willing to engage with us. And we'll work with the peer to kind of go out there and kind of break that ice, to really break that stigma. Like they see somebody like, oh, this is a peer, this is somebody who kind of understands and has gone through these types of things. It kind of helps them build that trust in the services that we provide. So I'm a big fan of like peers going out first, you know what I mean? Touching base with the family. There's been times where I have been able to, myself or members of my team have been able to kind of work with the youth, kind of just breaking that ice, building that rapport, trying to break that stigma of like mental health services. And they're able to just have a conversation, man. And then once it comes time, like, hey, okay, so let's set a date, you know, the clinician's coming tomorrow, we're gonna do the intake. We're able to, the youth partners, I've encouraged youth partners to like kind of be present for that intake, because there are questions that come up, and either during the intake or the building of the treatment plan, there are questions that come up or situations that come up that the youth might not be able to, not really recognize that they voiced earlier. And us as youth partners, we're able to kind of prompt that youth, like, hey, remember when we were talking yesterday, you said that like you really wanted to finish school, you know what I mean? Like, and so we're able to, oh yeah, I did. I guess I did say that. I suppose I want to graduate on time, you know? And we're able to kind of start that conversation with like the family. So I think at the very least, in like through my eyes anyway, like the youth partner and the clinician, so as to not overwhelm the family too much. But I think it's important to have like all positions like from the beginning. There are times where there were times that I hopped into, or I was assigned a youth, and like they were graduating 2 weeks later, and I was why'd you guys assign me this if like I'm really just coming to like the graduation of services, you know? So it's really important to have that strong sense of team at the beginning, because the family also feels that at the beginning. If there's a strong cohesiveness to the team, they feel that. If there's a miscommunication with any of the members of the team, they're going to feel that as well, and that sometimes can reflect on like the quality of their intervention or the quality of services that we can provide them. I don't know if Gloria, Rhoda, you guys had any like other thoughts on that?
Nope, I think you covered it.
Yeah. I think, like you said, the most important thing is that it really depends on the family and what their needs are.
Mm-hmm.
So if it is needed that the whole team go out and meet the family the first time, then that's what's going to happen. Maybe the parent is struggling. Maybe you have a youth that really doesn't want to talk, and the clinician, you know, needs to go out there and do the assessment. So, and it might be they have other needs where the family support specialist might be helpful to be there during that first meeting. So it just really depends. And I know that's a different, you know, sometimes an ambiguous answer, but that is the answer. It depends on the family's needs. That's, I think, more clear.
Right.
Really from the, you know, clinical perspective more, and we'll get, and later on we'll talk about how we work together. Once the family is in services, the family is always the hub of the intervention. They're always the, you know, the wheel, everything is centered around them. The clinician really, I say a navigator, but really is in the position where they need to make sure that things are put in place so the family can meet their goals successfully. And so one of the very kind of clinical things in this world is that the clinician really is responsible for ensuring that the intervention meets medical necessity. And I know that sounds very dry, but the way that is, you know, they make sure that the safety plan does it meet the risks on the referral? Does the treatment plan follow that golden thread and address those things that the families are concerned about? And are the interventions and treatment modalities based on the needs of the family and what that family is working on? And so that's really the responsibility of the clinician in that manner, as well as making sure that the proper things are prescribed to the family. And when I say that, what I mean is like I see it almost like a medical doctor. They do their assessment with the person. They find out, oh, okay, this is what the issue is. Here's what I think will help get that better. Are you in agreement? And then they give like whatever that prescription is, like, a vitamin or a pill or whatever that is. That's what the clinician does, but ours isn't in pills or those types of things. It might be, a youth partner really would be valuable for this family. A parent partner is valuable for this family. A family support specialist would be valuable. And they need to make sure that all of those things are listed on the treatment plan. Otherwise, we're giving a family something that isn't prescribed to them. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. And I think in talking with peers, just like anything, if you're going to prescribe or suggest something to the family, you should really know what the benefits of that, the peer role is, how they can best meet the family's needs. There are people who have been there and done that, and some of them still are. So while I could say in my treatment, yeah, I don't really understand how that feels but I understand what you're saying. Peers really do understand and have that understanding in a way that clinicians don't, and aren't trained to share their own story, quite frankly. And so the benefit of that is they can open up that youth or parent in a manner, in a therapeutic manner that we're not able to do so. And so clinicians really need to understand that when they're working with peers. So that's kind of that in a nutshell. I don't know if anyone has any particular questions about that. All righty.
I can't see the chat box. So if there are any questions, I'm hoping Gloria wrote it. Just let me know.
Yeah, it doesn't look
Move
like
forward.
there's any questions around that.
Okay.
So, and you guys jump in as well. So we all, want to ensure that the peers and the clinicians are all working towards the same goal. A lot of times what we do, in particular, I know that parent partners do this quite often, and Oscar, I believe the youth peers do as well, is review that. One, they do the treatment plan with the family, but then it might be that the parent peer might spend some time just reviewing the whole treatment plan and the goal to ensure that they really understand it and that they're aligned with it. And so it's really, the peers and the clinicians working together to make sure that we're all working on the same goal. Unfortunately, and you guys can speak to this, there have been times when the clinician was working on one thing over here and the peer was working on another thing, and it's very confusing to the family. And so we really want to, work together to make sure we're working towards the same thing. To be able to have open and honest conversations with one another. And this is one thing that I really, as a clinician and clinical manager, I really treasure about the peers is their ability to give their perspective and the parent's perspective in an open and honest way, where it's a way that I wouldn't really look at it. And so, Gloria, I think you have an example of that situation that happened more recently where we were able to have a really open and honest conversation and not judgmental to move the family forward, if you want to share that.
Right. With one of the parent peers, she's been working with the family for quite a while. Family had had a couple of clinicians. Mom had been expressing that she didn't feel her voice was being heard. Kind of did the process of empowering mom to talk a little bit to the clinician, but she still wasn't feeling that her voice was heard. And so parent peer that I supervised came to me. We kind of had a discussion, talked about it. I actually reached out, talked to the parent, and then I also connected with Rhoda to kind of talk to see how we could kind of problem solve for the good of the family and making sure that the mom's voice was heard. And so, I mean, there was different phases with the conversations, but it was for the good of the family so that they could move forward with services and not be kind of, I guess, stagnant and the parent not feeling that their voice is heard.
And then complementing and reinforcing our roles. And I think, Oscar, you touched about that when, you were talking about a youth who may not want to meet with the clinician, and just kind of reinforcing how that might be beneficial for them.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, absolutely. So this next time we'll be talking about navigating and supporting families through teamwork. So like I talked about earlier, sometimes miscommunication can happen, and sometimes as peers, we step in to try to bridge that gap in communication or ideals. And And sometimes that can kind of look like some of the examples that we kind of brought on. So one of the first ones, like you could start off with youth or parent peer listen to concerns from parent or youth, voices concerns to clinicians but feels that they are not heard. Um, Oftentimes, uh, like the parent will voice to the parent peer or the youth to his youth partner that things that aren't might not be going so smooth, or things that they would like to see improved on, or times that they feel that they aren't being heard in their own intervention, or hey, I voiced this need and it's not getting reflected in my treatment plan. Um, so though, like there are times that the youth voice, so again, that youth voice, youth choice, is not being brought forth, or at least not being received sometimes, or received in the right way. And it's those times that us as peer supervisors, we can reach out to the parent to hear that perspective, to make sure. Sometimes we got to just double check, like, who is leading this conversation. You know what I mean? There are times where I have to kind of wonder myself, like, I have to double check because I know that I might have a youth partner who's really, gun ho about, like, man, I want to make sure these people are heard, so I want to make sure that, like, I have all the information before moving forward with, like, reaching out to the direct clinical supervisor, or, just to make sure that their voices are being heard. I don't know if, Gloria, you had some examples as those.
Or yes, so sometimes, kind of like Oscar was saying, I know the peers in our office are really good about either coming to me or coming to Oscar, kind of expressing or explaining, hey, I've been working with this parent or youth, and I try to talk to the clinician, but it doesn't kind of look like things are happening. Youth or parent is still frustrated, and so a lot of times as the peer supervisor, I have the ability to actually, and I think Oscar also, we can sometimes reach out to the parent or the youth because we feel that that's important to kind of hear. One, we're hearing from the peer that they're working with, but then also being able to directly talk to that parent or youth, getting their perspective directly. So then when we are taking that information to the peer supervisor and kind of explaining the circumstances, what has happened, we are bringing forth even more so the parent or youth's voice and that peer that's working with them. And so it makes it helpful to kind of have all of the parties kind of involved. We've got the information that they've shared with us. And even, I don't know about you, Oscar, but I know sometimes even when I'm reaching out to a parent and I'm, listening to kind of their passion, I'm listening to what they've gone through. They'll even share with me kind of what the peer has, tried to help support them do. And a lot of times when I'm talking to the parent, I will just merely ask them, at this point, I'm sorry that you're having to go through this. What is it that you feel would help your family right now move forward? And a lot of times that way I'm hearing from that parent what they feel would be supportive for their family. And then that's where I can take that information to the direct clinical supervisor and, kind of lay it all out, and then even kind of give, this is what the family is expressing, or in a youth, of what they would like to see.
I have a question. Does it then trickle down to the team itself from supervision? Once you supervisors gather the information and go to each other, do you then reconvene with the team and kind of have that conversation of, like, hey, the peer was hearing this from the family, and there was a miscommunication, but we've all kind of come to the conclusion that this is something that the family really needs. What can you as clinician, facilitator, other peer, however, do to help them get their needs met or help them feel like they're heard more? Does that happen afterwards? Is that part of the process?
Well, like, I think initially the parent or youth, like at the beginning, the youth or parent peer is going to listen to the concerns from the parent, and they're going to voice that to the clinicians, so the clinician will already have heard these voices and concerns, and yeah, I think if I'm hearing correctly, like, once we go in through this, like, reaching out to the clinician, and maybe nothing has happened, like, I think that then the peer supervisor reaching out to the clinical the clinical supervisor, yeah, it does get down to the team after that, you know what I mean? And maybe through a different lens because they're reaching out to a clinical supervisor and they might have a different perspective. The same way that like us as peer supervisors, we have a different perspective as somebody as a youth partner or a parent partner, right? Because we understand that there is like um, certain like I don't know how to put it, like you have a different view, have like a wider view, and so the same way with the clinical supervisor, they might have a wider view, and they might have that within that wider view is part of our like us as peer supervisors going to them and bringing forth this idea or this view to them, and then they're able to kind of like take that in and understand from a clinical standpoint how it's going to be beneficial while still be able to communicate to that team. You know, if maybe that person in the on that team maybe they didn't receive it in the same way that it was brought to them by their clinical manager or something, and it just kind of brings that different perspective. You know, does that answer it, or did I get near it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I that makes sense for like misunderstandings as far as like I understand like the clinical supervisor would be taking the information and kind of making the verbiage more understandable for the rest of the team. But when there's like an actual conflict of people butting heads and not agreeing, and I know what you said, but I think you're wrong type situations, is there a space to like work through that with the teams that you guys in your supervision, like being supervisors is, because I think, I mean, you know, teaming I think is really important, and I think it's something that can be undervalued. And so
I feel like I've seen that happen like in staffings, like because so we have staffings once a week. Each team has their staffings, and they get that opportunity to kind of also, you know, if there are some barriers. So these are perfect opportunities to like any barriers, any, you know what I mean, like different perspectives. Is there anybody that we need to staff, right? And so with that family comes up, then I think that is the moment to kind of bring forth those different perspectives, because a lot of times like either myself or Gloria will be in one of those staffings. So there is that peer supervisor within that staffing along with the clinical supervisor, and then everybody's on the same team, on the same page, and you're able to kind of voice that, like, you know, I think that's really the platform to share that that youth perspective, you know, during the staffing as to like why is this important, you know what I'm saying? And there could be disagreements, and I think in that like scenario, in that setting, with those disagreements, you're able to kind of like, you might be able to sort through where the disagreement is, or like, or why do I feel this way? You know, I feel this way because this is my perspective. I've been through that, and so I know how this feels. You know what I'm saying? So like, and they voice to me that they feel this way, and so this is why I'm pushing so hard for it. I don't know if Gloria or Rhoda, you guys have other like scenarios where that is kind of maybe aside from just like simple miscommunication, there's just a difference in visions or not visions, but like ideals. I don't know. Like I get what you're saying though, Tanya.
Yes, it's sometimes I think that I call it different perspectives, the peer perspective and the clinical perspective, because I know sometimes even with families, a clinician can go and say, I don't know, that cat is orange, and the parent might be, I mean, not parent, I'm saying the other parent might be like, what, I don't know what you mean. And then the peer can come in and say, that cat is orange, but it's, I don't know, the way that they say it. And I've heard, I mean, a lot of clinicians say, that's exactly what I said. How come they, you know, understood the way that you said it and didn't understand the way that I said it? And so I think, and I'm trying to think of an example, and I know kind of what Oscar is speaking to in staffing, that is quite often places where a peer will speak up if there's, you know, something that's happening or something that's maybe being said. And it's that opportunity to share kind of that peer perspective. And a lot of times in staffing, when that's shared, there might be others that are like, oh, I didn't even think about it that way, or I didn't look at it that way.
Yep. And this, I think the last one was really just once like that peer, once we've gone through that process of reaching out to a clinical supervisor, we update our managers on whether there's been a resolution or not. You know, and if there hasn't, and it hasn't been resolved, usually a manager will step in to like support the family, because most importantly, we want to support the family, right? Like, what is the best? How can we best support them? And so, of course, when the manager steps in, they're gonna want to like follow that and support the family with that. I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that one, Rhoda, from the clinical manager view.
And I
just
see,
oh, go ahead, Gloria.
oh no, I was just saying, I see that there's a question also.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You can go, Rhoda, and then I can.
Yeah, let me just add that to your question. There have been a few cases where the clinician really had one perspective and the peer had another based on what she felt she was hearing from the parent, and very strongly, you know, really did what she thought she was right regarding the parent. And in hearing that, and that's where Gloria brings things to me, and I get both perspectives. And in hearing what the peer was saying, it did make more sense for us to go in the direction of what the peer and the parent wanted to say, of course. And so there was some education being and training done with the clinician. And what we always try and do is look to see what is in the best interest of the family, and are we moving in that direction? And if we're not, then we need to stop and listen in and move our perspectives. And so there are a few cases where, you know, we've had to come together and really kind of lay things out on the table in a more formal manner, and then get to what next steps are, whether that's the clinician being trained in a certain way, or maybe the peer being updated on certain things. So it does, I hope that answers your question. It says, oh, go ahead.
No, it just said in that I've read treatment plans that have been written with minimal input from the peer. And
that can happen sometimes. I think that's why, like, so at CCS, one of the things that we started implementing is when new clinicians come on, like myself or Gloria, we'll have a sit-down conversation and kind of just block off some time for us to go over like what a peer does and what a peer doesn't do. I think we'll go over some of those things in one of these next slides. But these conversations are so important because it kind of lays out the expectation of what I need to do to get a peer involved. So I let them know, like, if you're going to request a peer, peers are a prescribed service. So why is it that you want a peer? You know what I'm saying? If and it might sound redundant to the clinician and to my clinical like supervisor peers and stuff, but at the same time, it really gets them thinking like, okay, I know Oscar's going to ask, like, what's the need behind this peer? Like, what is the need behind it? It can't just be because they need somebody to talk to, right? Like it's a prescribed service, so there really should be a way for us to be used, you know. And how else are we gonna as peers know how we're gonna provide support to these youth without having that treatment plan to go off of? So it's really important to have, since it is a prescribed service, there needs to be a reason why, you know, goals and stuff that a youth partner should be working on, or, you know what I mean, it should be reflected what the youth partner role is going to be within the treatment plan.
And I think that even goes back a little bit to when Rhoda was mentioning the treatment plan. And like, I know with the parent peers at our office, we will sometimes, when we're meeting with the parent, kind of go over that. I don't think it happens as much anymore, but I know there were times where the parent would be like, wait, what is that? Or, you know, what is that? What are we working on? And that's where sometimes we would discover kind of what Rhoda was mentioning. The clinician is working on one kind of aspect, but the parent is feeling like they're working on something else. And then it just kind of gets at a standstill. And so even at our office, our parent peers, we actually work with the family to create their family vision, and supporting them in like those first couple of meetings that we're having with them. So I think that helps too when we're talking with them about their goals.
Yeah.
A lot
Move on to-
too, I think that is helpful is, and I'm not sure how some of the other agencies work, but at that first team meeting, which should happen within the first couple of weeks of the family opening up, both peers would be present at that. And from that team meeting, a lot of time that's where the treatment plan can be at least started and get ideas. So that in that the peer can give like their input and perspective on that. So I don't like, so that might be an idea to get the, you know, peers input more. And I know that both Gloria and Oscar have come to me in the past and said, hey, like, these are the goals on the treatment plan, but it's not fitting what the youth really wants. So that's when we would go back and revise the treatment plan to meet the youth goal.
Absolutely. A familiar voice. So us being supervisors, me and Gloria being supervisors, being peers as well, people that have been out in the field, understanding what it's like to kind of collaborate with clinicians and stuff. And it just feels like a familiar voice to have somebody who's also a peer understand your role, that you could bring these questions. You don't feel like you are going against the grain by asking, like, is this within my role? You know what I'm saying? Like, because there are some times where it's it can be pretty straightforward, you know, or it could be a little gray area to whether it's within a youth partner's role or a parent partner's role. I think that a lot of times it's about like mastering the youth partner role. And I think once you master that, or mastering the being a peer, once you master that, you're able to swerve in and out of like lanes, as long as you're able to still tie it back to like a peer related service, right? One example that I always use is like if there was a youth who who's about to graduate high school, about to be 18, and they want to get a tattoo. They want to get a tattoo, and they want to get a tattoo. And sorry, one moment. Boy, you want to take over real quick?
Okay. I can't finish his tattoo story, but I'll let him finish back. But I do kind of that peer supporting peers, because being that I still work with families, I still meet with families, all the new parent peers that I'm getting, I'm going out with them, I'm working with them on their first few families. And so that I think really feels comfortable for the newer peers to know that, you know, oh, this person that's training me actually has done the peer work. If I have questions, they can, you know, answer my questions. And kind of like what Oscar was just saying, feeling comfortable bringing forth those questions of, you know, hey, I'm not really sure about this. Is this what we do? Can you expand on this? But Oscar, go ahead so you can finish your tattoo. So.
Oh yeah. I was like, damn, where was I at? This guy got me distracted. Yeah, so like youth wants to get a tattoo, you know what I mean? And they want the youth partner there to be able to support them through that. Some people would say like, is that within a youth partner's role to support them in getting that tattoo? People might say, no, it's not within his role or not within their role. But what if this youth comes from a family whose culture is about tattoos? You know, mom and dad might be tatted up, brothers are tatted up, and they've made an agreement with the youth that like, hey, if you graduate on time and you know you graduate, we'll support you and let you, you know, get that first tattoo. But the youth might be a little bit afraid, you know, might need that extra support. This might be a goal that they achieved is graduating from high school. You know what I mean? They're getting rewarded with doing that. So it can be within that role, and sometimes like these gray areas come up, and these gray areas come up, and we're able to kind of help support those youth partners, like see how it could be a peer related role, or even if there might be times where they ask like, oh, I was asked by a clinician to, if I could just drop him off to the doctor appointment. You know what I mean? We're not like, sometimes we have to explain like it's not a taxi service. You know, there has to be a reason behind what we're doing. However, I'm totally down to meet with that youth before his doctor's appointment, so that we can meet before the doctor's appointment, so that we can kind of prepare and you know, like mentally prepare and think about things that that might come up, and things that we might feel nervous about talking about, and kind of just go over and how we can prepare for those. And then I could drop him off or you know, to his doctor appointment at the office or something like that. That way I'm still able to support the youth in getting to that appointment while I'm still providing a peer supported service. Does that make sense? So I was just wanted to touch base on that, like being a peer supervisor and being a peer myself. I understand questions that might arise as far as is this within my role, and we're able to support that. You know, we're able to support other peers who are having those same questions.
Right, and then I can kind of talk on keeping track of families. So one of the things, or the way that it is at our office, is that when peers are assigned to families, the clinical supervisors are kind of talking with Oscar and myself when they're requesting a parent peer or a youth peer. And then that kind of helps us also, you know how many families each peer is having. I'm meeting kind of with the parents on my team weekly, just kind of touching base, kind of seeing how things are doing with the families. If they have any questions, concerns, we're kind of staffing talking about that. Of course, if something is coming up that it's like urgent, then I'm reaching out to my own supervisor, Rhoda, kind of staffing that with her, and then taking whatever steps or protocol need to happen with that. And so I think that that's helpful with kind of the weekly supervision with their peer supervisor, and then all of the parent peers attend a staffing also weekly to staff with the clinical team what's going on with the families that they're working with. And so I think that that's really helpful for the peers, kind of having that cohesion with the teams, staffing and having their, call it peer supervisor, and then they also have that clinical supervisor that's overseeing the staffings.
Mm-hmm. And so with weekly supervision and what to expect, we have supervision with our staff. We block off an hour, and some of the things that we go through are those types of what are you struggling with, like what's working. Sometimes there can be a trend in not being included in the planning of team meetings, just kind of being overlooked or missing information. And so as the supervisors try to keeping that listening ear to them, supporting them in times that they may not be feeling heard from the team, as well as like going over expectations, productivity expectations, and how we can strategize to meet those, or if there's any if there's any barriers to submitting documentations on time, like what we can go over and start building a plan to how to help support youth partners and help develop them professionally. So going over what areas would they like to expand on. I know I had a youth partner who had never worked with male youth, and so that was something that she really wanted to work towards. And we were able to come up with a plan, and it was really easy because it was like it's just, you're providing the same service, and it's really going to be unconditional anyway. But she thought that it would be different, and when she started getting going, it was just really easy for her to just continue the level of quality work that she was doing, and it wasn't such a difficult thing for her. But exploring these types of these professional developments with our youth partners and parent partners, and seeing how we can continue to support them in growing with different in different areas that they might choose to go or learn more about, right? I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, Gloria, as far as like weekly supervision and what to expect?
Sorry, muted. um, Trying to think, I mean, you covered most of the items in the supervision, and I know sometimes it's the piece kind of balancing that direct time and indirect time, and maybe kind of helping coach staff on how to kind of go about that, making sure that they're not having more indirect time, which is like trainings, less time, I guess, with the families. And so it's trying to figure out how can I help you strategize and we can work together so that you're getting that more direct time with the families. And I think you mentioned kind of the strategizing with families as far as meeting with that peer, kind of going over, you know, I let them tell me kind of, hey, what are you working on with the family? How is that going? If there's extra maybe coaching tips that I can support them in, or I don't know, maybe there's, maybe it's a parent that they're calling and trying to engage with, but the parent maybe keeps canceling, or the parent, they can't seem to catch the parent. And so it's kind of talking with them on some different strategies. Of course, right now it's COVID, so it's a little bit different, but it's like, you know, hey, maybe you could just drop by to say hi, or dropping off something. Just coming up with different ways that they could kind of engage with that parent that's maybe not ready at the time to meet with them. And it's kind of that like, don't give up, just keep trying to reach out to them, letting them know that you are there if they need that support. And so, yeah.
Muted for a second. I think, yeah, I've covered it. The listening ear, mastering the peer role. I did kind of cover a lot of those. Sorry, Gloria. I was looking like, oh,
okay.
I did. But yeah. So I think we really just wanted to leave these last 15 minutes for any questions, any dialogue that you guys are interested in exploring. You got Rhoda, myself, and Gloria here. Definitely love to help out in any way we can.
Oscar, before we take questions, I just want to tell the group, and people, different agencies do things differently, and I understand that. I do, like I mentioned earlier, I do really see the value in peer supervisors. Having been a clinical supervisor and supervising a whole team of clinicians, as well as directly supervising peers, I found, and it might have been just myself, but I found myself falling a little bit short because, I mean, for the peers, because I was managing risk and very high risk kids and making sure that treatment plans are medical, you know, medical necessity, and oftentimes didn't have a lot of time to sit down with the peers and really meet with them about their obstacles, or it would have to like rise to the, I guess top. And even for things like if they were struggling to tell their story, or if they were meeting with a family that was a little bit close to their story and they were being uncomfortable, well, I could talk them through that. I couldn't necessarily coach them through that because I don't have those same experiences. I'm not a peer. I don't know what it's like to open up my story to someone, a stranger really, and have those raw emotions out there. And I felt like I was not intentionally, but I felt like I was not as effective as I really wanted to be for them. And so that's why I really see the value. The other thing is that, you know, Oscar and Gloria are able to give really trained clinical staff a really different perspective, because we're trained a certain way. We do this and it's like, hey, you guys, did you ever think about this? And it's like, oh yeah. So now, being in this position for a while, I often do think well, let's hear the peers' perspective, because there's immense value in that. And we can all learn a lot from that. And I reach out to Gloria and Oscar, you know, today and say, hey, Oscar, this is the need that I have. Does this fit the peer perspective or the peer role? And if not, like, how can I redo some things so we're making sure that we're being consistent? So I just want to let the group know that I really have I witness the value, I see the value. So that was just my 2 cents.
Well, thank you. I think, well, I'll just read off the message real quick. I think there's only one question that we might not have covered. And then I'll just open it up to see if you guys have any questions you want to answer, like on camera. So from Tanya, I had to step away. Sorry if you said this, but does peer supervision replace clinical supervision, or is it an add-on? I have my thoughts on it, but I'm interested in hearing, like, from Gloria and Rhoda, what you guys think. So does peer supervision replace clinical supervision, or is it an add-on?
No, it doesn't replace clinical supervision. I don't think I would say it's an add-on. I would say it's enmeshed in both the peer supervision and in the staffings, is that the clinical supervision part of it. I don't know if that answered the question, but that's the way I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it is different though, but it does work together. I think that you know, like I understanding that there is a clinical drive, you know, but I'm still gonna like support my staff in like what the peer perspective is, you know, like making sure that we're sticking to our peer perspective and we're not stepping out of that line. While there still might be a clinical lead to it, definitely I always like, if it is related to the peer work, I'm gonna I help with the youth in the supervision in that. I don't know if Gloria, did you had anything to add on that or?
No, and I agree. And I think that's where, I mean, Oscar and I have I feel, good rapport with our leadership team. And so it's kind of, we're working right alongside them, kind of bringing that peer perspective voice forward, and kind of like what Rhoda was identifying. Like, I know that I can go to Rhoda and have conversations, and it's just nice to be able to have that conversation with her. You know, she listens, and then, like she said, you know, sometimes she might ask me questions, I might ask her questions, but ultimately it's for the good of the family. And so I think with Oscar and I, we're bringing that peer perspective of, you know, this is kind of how we're seeing it. This is kind of what that peer role is. And then, you know, there might be sometimes, and there has been sometimes where I'll have a conversation and it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm glad that we were able to talk about it. And then I can also go back and talk to, you know, the parent peer and kind of explain that to them. So I don't know. I just think it's a good dynamic that we have.
For sure. So I'm just going through the messages. I think, let's see. I don't know if there's any questions. I think those were just kind of like adding to the other comments around the requirements to supervise a peer. Are there any questions that you guys have, like on camera, that you guys are feeling comfortable asking, or if there's any like clarification or if you want us to expand on any of the things that we covered, or maybe something that you feel like we didn't cover and you'd like an answer on or something? Take a crack at it. No? All right. Let's see. I think we still got a little bit of time.
Yeah, Oscar, I got a question for you.
For sure.
We work as a WISE team, and I know we're always told it's important we stay in our lane, meaning that we don't want to be stepping over into the family support or the clinician's role when we're working with families, but kind of our role is to bridge at least I feel, part of our role is to bridge families with other WISE team members because we can approach from a different angle. We're not coming in as the experts, coming in as being vulnerable and sharing experiences, and that creates a different type of relationship with families. But from your own experiences, I mean, how difficult does that become when you're working on a team and sometimes the agenda is going in a different direction, even though you may be on that team because you have the skills and expertise and particularly experience of being in that role as a parent and probably receiving services as a family? How do you explain that to other team members without stepping on their toes and, of course, having to stay in your lane? So being diplomatic, in other words.
Being what?
Diplomatic.
Oh, I think so communication with your team is going to be important, right? You want to make sure that you guys are all like on the same page and understanding what your own strengths are. There are times that it made more sense for me to do a certain task with the youth because I had that rapport with them, or they were going to receive it better from me. And there are times that it was not going to be received well for me if I was the one doing a safety sweep. You know, that wouldn't be within my role to do a safety sweep for that youth. But it might be within my role to be there to support that youth during the safety sweep, right? I think to answer your question, I try to, if you are going to swerve into like another lane, or you know, just make sure that you're communicating with your team, with your intentionality of that, what that intentionality is, and in everything that you're doing, you're going to want to tie it back to your peer work, right? Again, I'm not going to drop a kid off just to his appointment, but I might tie it to my work because I'm going to support them beforehand, and then we could end our session at the office and stuff. So in regards to like staying in your lane, I think it's okay to kind of swerve in it as long as you're able to communicate what it is that you're doing and how it relates to like your position and stuff, right? And as long as it's always going to be to support the family. So it's always, as long as you and your team is on the same page and supporting that family, things usually go smoothly. I don't know, Gloria, Brody, you guys had any other experiences with that? No.
Sorry, I'm trying to get over to unmute.
Yeah, I can't. Oh, I guess I was.
No, I mean, I could kind of like what you've kind of stated. I mean, I know that there sometimes parent peers are maybe asked to do something or thinking, and that's kind of what I have a conversation with them about, you know, okay, what's the intentionality of, you know, is that going to kind of tie to the service plan, or can you kind of share with me exactly what it is that you're trying to do to support the family or the parent? And just kind of having those conversations. But I think too, every situation's a different situation. So I think sometimes it depends on that also.
So I have a question again.
Okay.
I love that you guys like prep the new employees, the new clinicians and facilitators and all that as to what a peer does and what we are. Because I've had one of my favorite clinicians was like, I don't even know what you're for. And I'm like, let me show you. But I think that having, and we have a great relationship now, but I think having that like upon entry is such a great idea. And I actually work in the Bremerton office, guys. So shoot some stuff over to our side so that we can get this and implement it, because I think, you know, the clinicians have this very specific skill set. The facilitators learn a very specific skill set because boy, it's a learning curve coming into that job I've seen. And then so do we, but our job is so new. And like, you know, if a therapist is coming to my house, I know what they're coming for. If a care coordinator is coming, I know what they're coming for. But a peer, what is that? Who are you? What do you do? And so, you know, as a peer saying that, I can only imagine what other teammates are thinking. So how would we get that expanded? How do you think that could be brought to other sites?
I can answer that. I think that just what we've done in the past is just write an email or, hey, I proposal, can we be a part of the, you know, the training? We also do a little bit, and I don't know exactly what your training is, but we do like a week-long academy here for all the clinicians where Oscar and Gloria, not only do they sit with them individually, but sit with them in a whole group and explain what the payroll is and how they can be best utilized. So I would start with an email to, I don't know, your supervisor, or have a pretty great director there too. So this is my kind of 2 cents.
Okay, thank
Sure.
you.
Yeah.
Rachel, did I see that you had your hand up earlier? No? I could have sworn I saw you put your hand up or something.
There's a question in here, Oscar, from Mayra, I think. Myra, sorry. What is some advice you can give a supervisor who has not been in the peer role to better support?
CPC.
Yep.
Yeah, so I saw that Rachel also added to know what a peer and peer can't do. I'm highly valued at my current agency and the team, but occasionally I have to remind my boss that I'm not qualified to do a certain task. I think that's probably the biggest thing is like what we can and can't do, because that's what we like talk with when new clinicians come on. Like, this is what we can and can't do. There are some things that we are just not a taxi service. You know what I mean? We're just not, or they just need somebody to talk to. It's a prescribed service, so like they really have to. You should really be thinking about how am I going to use this peer to best effectively like help this youth out in their treatment plan goal. But I think knowing what they can and can't do, understanding that our position is relationship based, and sometimes things that might hurt our relationship isn't always in the best interest. So like, just going and doing a safety sweep. You know, I might not be the one that's going to do that safety sweep because it's going to hurt my relationship with that youth to see me going through his things. Now I could be there and I'll sit with them. I'm like, yo, bro, I'd be pissed too if somebody's going through my bag, or you know what I'm saying? Like, I could be there and help them out and support them while somebody else is doing it. But understanding like what your role is and what you can and can't do, but also understanding that if you need to, you can swerve as long as you've mastered your role and you can tie it back to a peer-related service and still maintaining your peer role. I feel like that you are, if you're confident enough to do so, you know, and you can tie it back, then you can swerve into other lanes, but making sure that you're still staying as your peer. I've been asked to translate for youth, and I'm sitting there repeating what mom has said to the clinician with the youth sitting next to me, and I can feel him getting mad because it's almost like I'm the one saying it, like, but I'm just translating, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I'm literally not doing anything but translating from Spanish to English, and I could feel the youth getting upset. Now, I don't want him to have those feelings towards me because it's almost like I'm the one saying them to the clinicians, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that. But now I'm just repeating word for word, just being a translator. But it's those types of things that I just had to go back and I was like, you know what, dude, it didn't work out. You know, I just didn't like it. It just wasn't, I don't think I'm going to do that again. You know what I'm saying? I'll help translate for different situations, but if it's with my youth, I think that my role has to be clear. And my role is to support that youth. So,
Yeah.
You know, I have something to say about that. It's agency specific. So, for example, and I think we're running out of time. My first job was making sandwiches as a peer, and I did that for 2 years. And it was an agency that actually doesn't exist anymore. And you know, it was a really poorly run agency. I was supervised by someone who she could barely supervise herself. She could barely monitor her own appropriate behavior. Anyway, learned a lot from that. But, you know, sometimes you have to really be firm with management and say, even though I'm bilingual, I am not going to translate in that situation. That would be an inappropriate role for me to take in that situation. You need to call the interpretation services, and every agency has one. You need to call in the interpreter, because in that situation, that betrays that trust. And I don't know if you've had to do that, Oscar, or have done that, or are you just really polite like people?
No, I just had to tell him, you know, it's like, hey man, like I felt him feeling away, you know what I mean? I didn't feel comfortable with it. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't have to give too much of an explanation. I think our agency like really understands like the value of the peer. So like when we bring forth like that peer perspective, it really does get heard. And I love that about where I'm working at. But yeah, I can understand that it might not be the same at other agencies, but understanding that you're being clear, like, hey, I don't feel like this is within the role as a peer. This I feel like this is hurting my rapport, and you know, and I don't feel like that's within my role. And then explore that with whoever you might, with management or whatever.
Yeah, and another incident recently at my current job, which I love, my boss comes to me and she says to me, "Can you do a mini mental status exam?" And I said, "No, because I'm not qualified to do that. I'm a peer." She says, "Oh, that's right, you are."
Yeah.
You know, so it goes both ways. You know, I'm really respected in my current role, in my current team and current agency, but I've had to say to occasionally, I'm not qualified to do that. That is not in my wheelhouse.
Okay.
And just be real firm.
Absolutely. Is there any other questions at this moment? I think we're at like about a minute over. Dang, I didn't even give you guys the information. Oh shoot, hold on.
I think it's, I don't
On
know.
that last slide, I think.
A little link somewhere.
Oh man.
You could type it in the chat.
Oh yeah. Okay. So Rhoda and Gloria, if you guys want to type in your information in the chat, and then that way you guys can, you know, have a way to reach out to us for any questions or something like that. I didn't even go to the last slide that had our information on it. I totally forgot about it. I thought we were done with the questions. So
I thought that there was one more question, but I don't know.
Is there?
Do you
Did
guys
I
have
miss
an
anything?
evaluation? Sorry.
Oh, I had my hand up.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, I see it. How you doing, Don?
Well, the thing is I've been volunteering for 3 years, and I just got my first paying job. It was a company that has not had peers before. And when I asked them what my position was, their answer was, "I don't know." And I asked them what their vision for my position was. They said, "I don't know." And so I started presenting them with what I could do. I started telling them, "This is the training I want." And they're like, "Well, we don't know if that fits." I said, "Then give me your vision." So I'm in a position where I'm having to pioneer, and it's very difficult for the other peer that they hired. She's just getting her CPC certification because they don't have a vision for us. And so I'm trying to create one.
Right.
So, I mean, when you're in a situation, they're trying to tell me that I've got to write down what people say and make an assessment from them. I said, no, peers don't do that. We write down and we develop a plan to achieve a particular goal. We do not make assessments. Because I know I've been to family court as a peer on a volunteer basis. And I think it's as a peer's responsibility to let, like I guess as Rachel was saying, let them know what we cannot do. Because they will push more on. And like I say, I won't sit and make sandwiches for people. I'm too old for that. Thank you.
Well,
no, I appreciate it. Yeah.
And too valuable as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely just got to lay that out to what you can and can't do. It's I think that's probably one of the biggest thing or most common thing that a lot of us peers go through is like people's not non-clarification, I guess, or they're a little foggy as to what peers can and can't do. So it really is up to us sometimes to really kind of take up that mantle and really like advocate for what we can and can't do, especially if you don't have a supervisor, a peer supervisor, to be able to kind of give that message out, you know. It does unfortunately fall on the peers to have to keep reinforcing that image.
Well, and I also think that it's up to, you know, clinical staff to really listen and hear and see the value in that as well. So it's, my hope is that it's just not a one-way responsibility, but that clinical supervisors are being sensitive to that and listening to that and supporting, I guess. I do feel that it's, it kind of does sadden me to hear a little bit of that, because like I said, I hold the peers in much value and they've really taught me a lot and have made my work better.
For sure. I think to answer the question earlier, I don't think we don't have a evaluation sheet, right? But I'm down to just accept comments at my email if you guys are comfortable, or I'm not sure if the Peer Pathways provided one or how they're doing it. I think that before they had the evaluations.
I didn't know if they were mandated or not. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't miss out on it.
No, for sure. Yeah, well, yeah. It's the first time.
I think they might send one out. I think I know what
that's what I was thinking.
they were laying on the chair last year, but.
Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, good idea, good question. I didn't really think about that. But yeah, so I mean, we're over the time. It was a pleasure having everybody here. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate the questions. First time doing it over one of these things over telehealth. And so thanks for bearing with us. And
I'm putting in Rhoda's.
Yes, please.
I'm getting it. I'm slow.
Thank you.
2537597. Forgive me, I didn't put your clinical manager. Wait,
that's fine. That's fine. You don't have to.
Oops. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Gloria.
All right.
All right, guys.
Thanks everybody for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.